Welcome to the first episode of The Next CIO, where we hear from leaders in IT some of the challenges they believe IT faces today, with a focus on key business processes. And we'll also talk about actions the next CIO can take to address these challenges. Today, I'm very honored to have as a guest Toby Redshaw. Toby is the current CEO of Eris Advisory. He was previously voted a global top 50 CIO by Information Week and a top 25 CTO by InfoWorld. Welcome, Toby.
Glad to be here.
Hey, Toby, you've heard me say that the next CIO really needs to start thinking about moving IT to an autonomous IT self-driving operation. And why do I say that? The current CIO is responsible for many key business processes that span point siloed management tools that today are pretty much done manually, such as employee offboarding. One CIO I talked to said she and her IT staff were responsible for over 80 of these processes. In your experience, what are some of the issues that these manual processes have created?
But what you find with processes is it's the linkage of different departments just doing what they think is the right job and evolving over time and doing tweaks here and doing tweaks there. And when you show up and you analyze some of these processes, you go, holy Toledo, what is this? How did this get so out of sync, so non-instrumented, so inefficient, so error prone? And it's just the natural consequences of humans working in their org structures inside their silos, trying to get things done with scarce resources. I mean, a great example, every board of directors has cyber on the top of their list of things to worry about and things to address. And that's only going to get worse given how fantastically good at IT the dark web is and how much it's evolved into a modern asset-light play. And one of the key things in cyber is access controls. And it's an audit item at 95% of companies on the planet where the audit committee has it as an open item being worked on. What you look at when you look at access controls is how do people join the company? How do they move around inside the company? And how do they leave the company? Joiners, movers, leavers. And how do those processes have controls around them with their access controls, right? When we moved somebody out of, accounts payable into accounts receivable, into CFO, and then into line management, what did we do with those controls? And what you find is that it's a bunch of manual spaghetti that leads to real problems, especially when people leave. I've seen situations where people have left and they haven't taken them out of the payroll system, which is sort of embarrassing. And again, if you don't have the access controls squared away around your own employees, then there's 20 other things related to that you're not doing well.
Can you share with me a story or two that you've seen?
One of the things that companies miss when you think about processes inside IT and processes inside your business is controlled agility might be your only real sustainable competitive advantage, right? If I get to move 2 times every time you move, I win, right? If I operate inside your operational cycle, your OODA loop, I win. And where that really happens is not out on the front line with, courageous managers doing heroic things. It's your day-to-day processes. It's the clock speed of your company. So almost in every case where I've used these tools to improve processes, there's an aha moment when you first document the layers, the high level, and then the next level, and you document these processes, you go, oh my goodness, we're doing that to ourselves. And especially where you have handoffs, right? From order entry systems to warehouse management systems, or from the series of approvals or build steps that you have inside of IT itself. And I think really grasping this and knowing how to do this, you can actually help the business understand what's possible in a much, much more positive way. And again, going back, the icing on this cake, going back to, I grew up at FedEx where we were process maniacs, right? FedEx distributes 8 million packages through the Memphis hub every night. It's got lots of hubs, but Memphis is the big one. with very, very few errors. It's not because they're smarter than other people. They've layered on 4 layers of controls in their processes to proactively find those errors. And the real beauty of that is the error-free, proactively managed process is the lower cost process. So the one with the higher quality output is also the one with lowest cost structure. And I wasn't the smartest kid at business school, but lowest cost structure, highest quality output, that's a good thing. And that's an IT thing where IT has the power to demonstrate the efficacy of that inside of IT and then take it out to the business world.
So if I could just summarize, it sounds like the first step that the CIO needs to do is to document these manual processes, perhaps starting with employee offboarding, because that's pretty topical, given all the voluntary resignations and involuntary layoffs. But it seems like the CIO needs a starting benchmark for these processes. For instance, in offboarding, what's the cost of that to offboard an employee? What are the security vulnerabilities? Can you kind of expand on that a little bit more about this documenting of the processes?
Yeah, so there's sort of 5 layers to it, right? There's the first layer is the high level process. Second layer is the detailed process. Third layer, though, is then walking through those processes and from a controls point of view and going, okay, what happens when something goes wrong? What happens when somebody fat fingers an order for 10,000 when the order was really 100, which I've seen happen before in a big company that made phones in Chicago that began with M, where we fixed that gap. And so that's the third layer, going through the control process. The fourth layer is, how are these processes instrumented? Because my performance, I just don't want to look at outcomes. I want to look at processes in motion and have data and trends around that. If you really believe in continuous improvement and continually being more competitive, you can't not have these instrumented. So that's the fourth layer on it. And then the fifth layer, when you start to get really good at this, is you start to treat these processes as assets. And when you build new processes, you take snippets of all processes, right? You take some of the control things you did over here and you just posit them there. So all of a sudden you have this vault of reusable assets and knowledge. And that is a really good, sustainable competitive advantage. Not to be just good at this, but be massively more efficient because you've over time built this store and this knowledge. Then, of course, these tools can be used to automate and do low code, no code stuff. But there's a lot of benefit in just taking a look and seeing how that works.
So it seems like then once you've documented, you mentioned about the board and management really having exposure to this, the dashboard, the KPIs, really knowing the status of these processes. It seems then that the next step, once you've documented them, you need an application that allows you to automate these processes and get the dashboards, get the KPIs. That's something I'm calling enterprise technology management, or an ETM application. ETM for CIOs would be like sales has CRM and HR has HRM. What do you think of this kind of CIO's application, this ETM application idea? Do you think that would be something that would allow you, for instance, the board, the CFO, CEO, certainly the CIO, to be able to see the status of these processes, see the costs, see the risks, see if certain tasks are not being completed on time?
It's one of those astounding things that it doesn't exist yet, right? But I think you're exactly right, given how important and central IT is and is going forward, right? Every company, to some extent, is a technology company. How are you not managing this in the same disciplined way you manage sales, customer service, supply chain, HR, your financial side? And I mean, imagine saying, well, okay, how do you manage your process? Well, we got good leaders and, we have monthly reports and, well, can you show me it written down? And this is, for me, is always one of the, everywhere I worked and consulted was like, all right, show me your joiner, mover, lever process written down. They're like, well, we got bits of that. And I want you to get to it. And the trick is, and you have to do this in a very gentle, humble, positive way, right? Because these things evolve to steaming piles of crap over many years by people in silos doing the jobs they were told to do, right? There's literally no bad behavior that got there. It's an evolutionary mess. So you can't go, aha, look at the mess you've got. You've got to frame it as, all right, now we've mapped the process. Look at the opportunities for improvement we've got. If you can quietly go, hey, we're going to take the fix of this upstairs to your boss and show how great this is now and how you've saved money and improved quality and improved cycle time, and you've become proactive and preventative and pattern matched. That's a great thing, but it is a nuance. And look, I find most problems in business aren't people being malevolent. It's just people misguidedly doing what they think is the right job.
Well, I think that just you take, for instance, these the processes that are current today are defined in big PDF files, like a 100-page PDF file that no one can follow, right? I mean, it was written by a compliance person, and then the manager actually has to try to follow it, and there's time constraints, and who in IT really wants to be dealing with tickets all the time, kind of manually taking people out of Active Directory and whatnot, right? So I think it would make the organization happier if they could automate a lot of these tasks that we have.
I took over an IT shop at a company that had 14,000 IT people. It also had 12 layers of management, which was a bit of a problem. I'm just in IT. And I went to all the business heads to find out, what the big hot buttons were, right? And I'm expecting, be better at analyzing this, have better AI to do this sort of stuff. We need, better merchant system or whatever. And it was, oh man, you've really got to fix the help desk. The help desk is a disaster. And look, the help desk was a disaster, but the real reason was the processes around it were nonsense, right? Were crazy. They literally had Company A doing first line of defense, Company B doing second line of defense, and then third level of escalation went back to Company A, and you're like, who designed that thing? So terrible design on top of total lack of managing process. But that's what the business people were worried about. So the IT people didn't even have a place to have a conversation about what is possible with tech, which is the key mission for IT, is earning the capability to have a conversation with the business about the land of what's possible, right? That's how you win with IT. And unfortunately, this lack of process is why most CEOs look at IT as a necessary evil, right?
Well, and I think that's why it's hard for IT to describe their value back to the line of business, because they're spending a lot of time dealing with tickets and manually doing things. And so the value that the business looks at that IT is kind of diminished. They don't really understand all the work that's getting done. But I think if you automate these processes, then the IT staff can spend more time strategically being advisors to the line of business on how best to use that technology. Because a lot of that technology, really, as soon as you get closer to the line of business, they know how to use it, but they don't know how to do database. They don't know how to do all those kinds of things.
If you're not managing your own processes, and you're looking at customer service, and you're looking at sales, and you're looking at supply chain, and you're looking at finance, and you're looking at HR, and they've got platforms to do this, albeit sometimes rudimentary platforms, and you've got nothing.
Well, I think it's not a surprise, because all these siloed management tools grow because you have siloed teams, right? The network people have their point tools, and the security folks have theirs, and DevOps has theirs for application performance managers. So it's not a surprise that you've grown up with these siloed management tools, but these processes have to span them. Right. If I'm an offboard employee, I got to look at access control. I got to go and get the endpoint back. I have to do all these things. So it's not surprising that we got here. It's just that how does the next CIO now operate? How do they have that higher level application, that the CRM or HRM type of application, to allow them to automate that so they can have more strategic conversation with the line of business?
Totally agree. Look, and part of it is the CEO and the business's fault, right? During the budget cycle, the business wants this to help revenue, finance wants this to help cost structure. The accounting folks want this stuff in their side of the shop. there's nobody coming to IT going, hey, would you look under the hood and organize yourself better and be a lot more efficient and build a process layer because we think that will help, right? That conversation doesn't happen. So it's a tricky thing for IT to go, I need to build this. And in this budget discussion, it means that thing that's number 4 on your list and number 5 on your list and number 6, you're not getting those. But when we get through this in a year, the cost structure will be so much better. You'll be able to get twice as much, right? Or at an FS company, we did this in the UK, giant 90 billion revenue. In 3 years, we took 600 million out of a $2.2 billion dollar spend, and we tripled output, right? And this was board approved, measured, done.
We could probably go on forever here, but I really appreciate your time. This has been extremely interesting, and appreciate your words of wisdom. I would like to thank our sponsor, Amitsa. They're the IT process automation software company, and actually the first ETM application in the market. And again, Toby, thank you. And I will be talking to you soon. Take care now.